The reason you're not finding your soul's purpose is probably because you're not asking yourself these 5 questions. You see, the soul's purpose is much bigger than just a career or a job or a business. There's actually elements or maybe subcategories to the soul's purpose, and that's what we're going to talk about today. The first element of a purpose is the spiritual purpose. The question we want to ask ourselves is, why did I choose to come to Earth this lifetime? I know, it's such a big question, but if you think about it, the idea is that the soul chose to come this lifetime. So before this lifetime, it was up there in between lives, coming up with a plan with, our council and deciding, okay, like these are the things I want to do this lifetime. Like this is the little plan I'm making, the little map I'm making for myself. So there is some sort of reason why the soul chose to come this lifetime. The spiritual purpose is really about the soul's own evolution. So yes, there's other reasons for, helping the earth and all that kind of stuff. But in this element, this aspect of the purpose, the soul is really trying to decide why now, why this lifetime, what am I trying to accomplish on a soul level? So it's really about the soul coming to this lifetime for its own evolution. Often a soul is coming to clear karmic relationships or to ascend. It's like, oh, Earth is in a good place. It looks like it's going to move into the next density. Maybe I'll come too, so I can also move into the next density. So it's really this, the soul is always trying to evolve. And this aspect of the purpose is what is it that can help me evolve to the next level? And that is part of why I'm here this lifetime. Element number 2 is collective purpose. And the question we want to ask ourselves is, why was I sent here this lifetime, right? So where the first time it was, why did I choose? This is a feeling of something sent me here. Something, there's a reason for me to be here this lifetime, because a collective purpose has a lot to do with service and the offering that we have that we want to give this world so we can support the Earth's evolution. So not every soul has a collective purpose. Some souls only come for that, that spiritual purpose. Every soul is going to have a spiritual purpose, but doesn't necessarily mean we're going to have a collective purpose. If you have a collective purpose, you also have a spiritual purpose. Hope that makes sense. But the collective purpose is really those souls. This is kind of also where we start to ask career questions sometimes, because there's some of us that are I feel like I'm meant to do something this lifetime. I just can't remember. And I love that question, because you're basically starting to remember the soul's contract. So it's not, I know it could be a scary thing to be asking, or it can really drive you crazy. But usually if you start asking that question, it's because you're remembering that you had a collective, that you decided on a collective purpose. And a lot of that is coming from what skills or what is unique to me, what is something that I can offer to the world that I feel called to offer. So the collective purpose is really about service and what I came here to do. This is where we find our light workers. This is also a lot of souls that are from other planets. So our star, our little star beings, they'll come from their other planets and bring gifts from those planets and try to remember them, and then bring them to this Earth to help, to help seed the new Earth, really. So that's a little tricky, because sometimes you're oh my gosh, I hate this place. I'm not from here. But if you're here, if you're feeling that, there's probably something very unique that you're bringing from your other civilization to seed this Earth. So don't feel discouraged. And then some of us are Earth experts. We've been here for a long time, and we have a lot of love for the Earth. And in a way, we have an expertise. So we come because almost we know what we're doing type of thing. And this is the aspect of the purpose where often we'll start to see a career come in, or a calling, or some sort of devotion come in. The third aspect of the purpose is the current purpose. And the question to ask ourselves is, currently, what is important for me to do in order to reach these higher aspects of the purpose? So for example, if the spiritual purpose and the collective purpose were like these big, tasks, or not tasks, excuse me, these big goals that we wanted to accomplish this lifetime, then the current purpose would be like the task on the to-do list. So it's something that is currently important, and it's very like present, like it's currently showing up in my life, because these bigger aspects of the purpose like will take a whole lifetime to complete. So if I sit here and be like, oh my gosh, I was sent here to help world peace, like, wow, I'm gonna be super overwhelmed and I'm never gonna accomplish that big goal if I don't really connect to the current purpose. So the current purpose is usually pretty obvious. It's like showing up in your life. It could be like a lesson that you're working through, like, oh, I'm really learning how to feel good about accepting money. I'm, really learning to forgive. I'm working on my root chakra and realizing that like I have a lot of these like limiting beliefs from my family, and I'm trying to release that. And even sometimes, like as silly as it may sound, but when I'm doing readings, some people, like the current purpose will be like, it is time to start dating. Like it's time for you to meet this other soul because it has something to do with other things in your purpose. So it's like almost, it's the opposite of having a bird's eye view. Like you're so in the details right now with the current purpose, but it's a little piece of a really big picture. So never underestimate the small things that are showing up in life, the small things that you're feeling called to. That is also part of your purpose. The fourth aspect of the soul's purpose is the required purpose. Or it could be seen as like the human purpose. And the question we want to ask is, what are my human assignments? So what are some things that are like undeniable? For example, I was born to Cuban parents. I'm the children of immigrants. Like I can't change that. I was born female. I am a parent. I have 3 children. So these are like requirements that are very human, and because of like the labels that we're in, certain things are required of us. Our culture might have requirements of us. Our children may have requirements of it. So it's kind of like the relationship to these other people or to these other, labels that are kind of asking things of us. So, and this has a lot to do with like lineage also. This is a big aspect of some of our purposes is to clear the lineage. It is to leave the world a little better for our children, to learn things and to heal things within ourselves so that our kids don't carry it on. Or if our culture has had these expectations for a certain amount of time, like we're gonna clear that out. So these are like very obvious, like human things that like I must deal with. It could be, I am a teacher, and like these are like these requirements. So sometimes like it's kind of, it almost feels like not that there was little choice, because obviously like you chose to have kids or whatever, but there are certain tasks that come along with those choices, and that's really what the required purpose is. And the last one, which is probably the most fun, is the personal purpose. And a question we want to ask ourselves is, what am I being called to? What do I love? Where do I feel like I'm being brought to? And the personal purpose is this kind of like a wild card, right? So as a soul, we did our best to create this little map and this little blueprint for this lifetime. But once we come to this lifetime, obviously we're living it with so many other people. We're on an earth, so there's so much other energy, and people are making decisions all the time, which is causing all these paths in the future to shift, and the energy shifts. So there's a lot of things that we can't predict. So the personal purpose is really like the human heart is like making these choices and is being called to certain things, and those are important to like kind of sum up the whole sphere of purpose, because it kind of it lets us take like a lot of these theories that our soul had, and it allows us to really live it out in like current modern earthly day. It has a lot to do with lifestyle. Another question is to ask is like, how do I want to live this lifetime, is another good question, because it has a lot to do with like your lifestyle, what feels comfortable for you, like what kind of life do you really want to have? And that is important because it could be tricky because it's like almost on like our human heart to decide that. It wasn't really like decided before, but it's like almost like the creative part of remembering the purpose. So it's kind of it's a little bit more of like, you know, we have our own creativity here. It's not like all these things have been decided for us. So it's a fun purpose to have. Well, I hope that was helpful. I will be making more purpose videos. If you love this one, share it with a friend, subscribe. I'm so excited to be here and to share what I've learned in all of the readings that I've been doing. And I hope this helps you find your beautiful purpose. Also, if you feel called to learn more about your purpose or work with me, I do monthly readings where I download messages from the divine guidance. So I connect to your spirit guides, to source, to receive answers to these kind of questions, especially when it comes to purpose. So you can just go to the bottom and follow the link, and I will see you there.